everyone. We are convening at a very critical juncture of India's energy future. As the third largest crude importer globally, India finds itself at the epicenter of recent geopolitical shifts. With nearly 90% of our crude and overall half of our natural gas sourced from international markets. Today, we will examine how India is navigating this new normal. Is it a new normal in the energy space? We will discuss the strategic shift away from discounted Russian crude due to new sanctions, the government's invocation of Essential Commodities Act to source domestic gas, and the long term imperatives to expand our strategic reserves. With me today are two very important components of the energy space. Mr. Achnu Mukherjee, CEO Dastur Energy, and what is very important is that not only is his parent part of energy infrastructure, they are a major energy consultants and advisors to the investors in the energy space. I have with me Mr. Rajesh K. Mediratta. In India's gas space, everyone in the energy gas exchange space, everyone knows him. So I welcome both the gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. And let's take our conversation forward. My first question to both of you is immediate and which every consumer wants to know. What exactly is happening in the geopolitical space as far as energy is concerned? Is what we are seeing the new normal? Mr. Mukherjee, let's begin with you. So you have to.
Oh, did you get me out? Okay. So just a couple of comments. This is, first of all, as I call it, as we see it, this is a geopolitical situation which has disrupted the supply chains. It's not exactly a structural change, right, in the demand supply dynamics, which basically means that I don't have a situation where the supply system has been is lagging behind the demand like it happened in 2003 and 2012. That's not the case. It's a geopolitical situation like the Arab oil embargo into 1973, 79, Iran, what they call embargo, and 91, the war, and so on and so forth, right? So typically geopolitical situations, as I see it, as we have seen historically and this time too, probably are transient in nature, right? They have this situational, elements of being there for weeks, maybe months, some months, but it's not a sustained, prolonged, what do you call, situation of denormalization, especially in crudes, right? And so we think that's the same case out here. The question is how long, right? And nobody knows that. How long is it going to be? Like I said, historically, it's been it's typically weeks, and the results are mostly in the crude markets have got to do with pricing, with the price, right? It's not really with shortages that much. It's about how the price changes, and you can have violent price volatilities, right, with such geopolitical rearrangements or situations, and that's what you're seeing right now. It has not been so pronounced except for a few spikes, right, a few days back. But, it's quite possible that as the supply-demand balance because of the geopolitical uncertainty and the supply chain bottleneck at the Strait of Hormuz plays out over the next few weeks, you will see this volatility go up and down, right? And don't be surprised that if oil prices go to 135, 140, maybe 145, but they're not going to, most likely not going to stay there for a long time, right? As the supplies reorganize, right? The routings reorganize, the demand system becomes a little more muted because of the high prices, and other levers are there which kind of like mitigate the situation. So I think yes, it's a severe geopolitical situation, unprecedented in nature. probably 15 million tons of crude going out, because of supply bottlenecks, supply chain bottlenecks, is unprecedented and the largest in percentage terms and absolute terms. And so, navigating this is a challenge. At the same time, we also want to understand that our crude supply system is much more resilient globally, and from India perspective also much more resilient than what it was 20 years back, right? So the ability to mitigate also such a geopolitical spike, right, and disturbance is probably more, right, in terms of how you manage it. And so I think that overall, and that's what I keep on saying, is that although it seems like a panic situation, it is not a panic situation. It's a very challenging situation, which can be worked through based on the different levers that we have got in terms of mitigating, especially for India, right, which is importing 85 to 90% of its oil and oil derivatives. So I think that's the reading that we got at this point of time. We don't know how long it is going to take. We hope that it is going to be not prolonged, not very elongated, but nobody can predict, right? But that's the estimation and hope that we have got, and it will play out over
So
time.
that's spoken like a perfect energy person that don't predict. No one predicts on oil. And that brings me to you, sir, Medirata, sir. Is India living a new normal as far as the pricing is concerned, as far as the availability of gas and oil is concerned? It's really worrisome, and we would really like to have your thoughts on it. Unmute. So you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Richa. Sorry. And thanks for having me here on this chat. And really, what Mr. Tanu said, it actually fits in very well with the gas also, because uh, same thing here. We are not talking about new normal. We are only talking of emergent conditions, and these emergent conditions, though we are not part of the war, but still we are facing the heat of this war, because our supply of gas is exposed to one of the corridors, and that corridor is got impacted due to this war. So I'll just give you that today we import something like 50% of our requirement, and out of this 50%, almost 55 to 60% of imports depend on this particular Strait of Hormuz, and that is actually causing the disruption. Had it had been in some other place, probably we would not have been impacted. So what we are seeing in terms of price, that prices is expected to go up, because we are short. The globally people are short, because 20% of gas was passing through that area. So we expect that prices will go up for some time, but that will be short lived. And actually, otherwise, if you see, we were expecting much lower prices. Actually, we were actually expecting something new, normal in case of gas, because if you see in after Ukraine war and after COVID, we have seen that prices have gone beyond to two digit, so two digit plus. Something like 14 to 15 or 20, and then due to Ukraine war, we also saw the prices going up to 85 dollars per MMBTU. And after that, it was to come down to a milder level. But since war is on and the shortage is there, Europe has moved away from Russian LNG. So we actually found the shortage of LNG continuing, but only because the new regime came in US, and everybody was expecting that more LNG supplies will be there. And for that reason, we expected that from this year at least we will see the relief in the prices. So rather we were expecting relief, but now because of this shortage, we are seeing the upside on the prices. But I also believe that this is going to be short-lived, though we don't know when this whole thing will stop. Maybe it will take a month or two, or maybe it will go beyond. But finally, we will see the day when prices are going to soften much better than what we have seen earlier. And if you see, our whole of gas sector has been impacted by prices going beyond 12, $13 because our customers are very sensitive. Though there are few sectors which are not very sensitive, like fertilizer, but city gas distribution, power, refinery, industrial customer, they almost contribute, these industries and CGD contribute almost like 50, more than 50% of the overall demand. And power earlier used to contribute something like 25%, but now it has come down to 15%. So all these three sectors will see major upside when actually prices will soften. And so far this year we have seen prices, the demand of gas has not moved up at all. It is remaining flat as compared to last year. The reason was price, and we expect maybe that price today, with when the this crisis is over, we will see much better prices, and the demand will really pick up. So actually, Richa, we are talking about a new normal in the sense that we will expect much better pricing and much lower pricing, and that will actually help our gas sector to expand.
So before, I mean, that's very well explained for us. But before I move on to, going more India specific and domestic questions, I had a question for both of you. Forget India. Can US also afford high prices? Mr. Mukherjee, let's begin with you. Can US also afford high prices? Here we are consumers, we are very price sensitive, we understand. But US, Europe, can they also afford these high prices which we are seeing today?
Well, prices affect everybody, right? Across the world, in global markets like, global liquid markets like crude and gas. United States, for example, will be subject to the same pricing, global pricing that India is, right, in terms of crude prices. And so if you look at it, right, the US prices on the gas stations, the petrol pumps, they have gone up by about 60, 70 cents over the past 1 week, okay, or more. So that's significant. Typical what you call gas price in the US was about slightly less than $3 a gallon. About a week back, it's gone up to about $3.60, $3.70, sometimes $4, right? Which is 25 to 30% jump, right, over the original price. So yes, they are affected. And given the nature of what you call consumption of crude, it affects, obviously the consumption pattern, and it affects the economy, right, in terms of inflation. And inflation has been has been on the uptake for quite some time in the United States, and was showing some signs of going down. But because crude prices affect different sectors of the economy, energy in the economy, it will have an impact on inflation. So yes, absolutely, U.S. consumers will be affected with respect to the crude prices. Gas prices have also moved. The Henry Hub has moved a little bit, not that much. U.S. is one of the largest gas producers, as you know, largest LNG exporters, about 100 million tons per year, approximately. So gas prices also have gone up from $3.5, $4 an MBT, $3.5, $3.8 an MBT to about $4.5. So yes, they do affect. And Europe, obviously, given the way that they, that they import, right, especially gas, right, and also what you call crude, and the refining capacities that they have got are different compared to India. India is very blessed, or India has got an advantage in terms of refineries. It's got heavy complex refineries. So basically they can process different kinds of crude slates, gives us flexibility to what you call, temper the prices to some degree. But Europe is probably more affected. And so, yes, to answer your question, it does affect the prices across the globe in terms of the crude and the gas commodities, and its effect on the downstream in terms of energy derivatives, which crude and gas is used for.
Madhurata, sir, I'll move to you now. My question to you will be that you have been behind the whole exchange concept in this gas sector in India, which is yet to mature. And spot prices, we know where it is going. Although India has been working more on long-term contracts, where do you see it going? And vis-a-vis the other part of the world, how well or how comfortably positioned are we?
Richard, due to I missed your last part. Could not hear
So
well.
what I want to understand, I'll just repeat it, that you have been part of the entire maturity of this gas market. You have been advocating it quite a bit. I want to understand from you. We know how the spot prices are going, and India works more on long term contracts. So, how comfortable a position India is in right now vis a vis this product is concerned?
No, actually, we are not at all comfortable. The reason is government has got priority to meet, and they are more focused on meeting the priority than keeping the markets functioning in the way they could have. So, as Richa, you may be knowing that there is a regulation order issued on 9th of March this week, and where they actually have planned to divert gas to priority sector if there is some gas which being consumed by petrochemical power and refineries. So they have given uh, kind of embargo for power plants to use gas. Petrochemicals also are asked not to use gas, and then refineries, their gas consumption will be limited by 65 by 35%. So they are allowed to use 65% of their consumption, and all of this gas will be diverted to CNG, PNG as first priority. Second will be fertilizer up to 70%. Industries have also have been given 80% entitlement to consume, and then the CNI customer within CGD also have been limited to, up to 80%. So all of this actually being done to take care of the priority sector, and that's, I think, government is doing right in the sense that they have social objectives to meet. So this is not actually helping the markets because market mechanisms have been totally stopped. So all of this pool is being done by GAIL, and pooling and depooling will be is or being managed by GAIL. So this is early days. So they have taken all the gas in the system, and they will be trying to meet these objectives of government that they have to meet 100% requirement of CNG, PNG, 70% of fertilizer, and like that. So we hope that once this situation eases, then we will get our market mechanisms back in place. But of course, there besides this, if I think more important is we should take some long-term takeaway from this crisis. So one is that of course we have been trying to diversify our sourcing, and that part we need to now further focus on the supply chain and corridors, because so far we were only diversifying in the sense that the few of the contracts are oil indexed or gas price index or hub index. Now they also have to see that how much they are dependent on Middle East, and can they diversify that, and probably that part will be done by our marketers who are sourcing gas for their requirement and for the industry's requirement. I think second part we need to work on is storage. We
Right.
should also see that how.
we'll come to that point in detail because I do want to discuss that point in detail with you people. But my core question is that and I want to bring another country which is also a big consumer. I mean, before we go into the nuances of what you were just telling us, is we don't see much of this kind of concern coming from China. Why is it? Is China better positioned than India? And this leads to the supplement questions which you were just mentioning. Has China really invested in building infrastructure for oil,
Richa,
gas?
just hold on. I'm losing a lot of your. Uh, I'm not getting fully. I don't know because my this thing. I'll maybe I'll put my video off so that I'm able to hear you better.
Let me see, sir. I'll be a little louder. Can you hear me now? Can
Yeah,
you hear
yeah, yeah,
me?
yeah, yeah. No, no. Maybe there's some bandwidth issue was there. I hope
Okay,
that should be
okay,
fine.
okay.
Yeah,
So we'll have
please
you
go
back
ahead.
as soon as the bank. So my question to both of you was, I brought in China here as to, why we don't hear much about the crisis scene in China. I'm sure they're also impacted as we are. But is it because China has big time invested in building infrastructures, having strategic reserves, storage capacities? What is it that has made China more comfortable than us?
So I don't know, Mr. Major, if you wanted to take it on the oil piece, I can just start with that, Richard. So I'm not sure that that is necessarily true. Yes, certainly. If you look at China, China's consumption of oil is about 16, 17 million barrels per day, right? India is about 5 million barrels of total, what they call oil production, refined oil production. So it's 3x more. It has the same pressures, right, in terms of imports of 75 to 80% imports, a little less than India. It has more exposure to the Strait of Hormuz than India has. The main problem is the Strait of Hormuz. So if you look at China's exposure to Iranian oil, which is quite significant, about 2 million barrels approximately, and so China's exposure to the Strait of Hormuz is about 50% of the imports, right, comes in from that region, passing through that strait. India is about 35 to 40%, right? Uh, so, uh, so from a perspective of the overall supply demand balance from imports that is coming into China or India, they are similar. In fact, India is a little more advantaged because India has got something what I call as the safety valve of petroleum product export, which can be diverted to domestic use if the need so be, right? So that's one. China doesn't have that. China exports very less, about 0.3, 0.4 million barrels of refined oil compared to India of 1.3, 1.4 million barrels. So from that perspective, not really. But having said that, China has significantly higher reserves should it come to that, right? So SPR reserves for China is about 400 million barrels or so. India is about 40 million barrels. But total reserves, including commercial reserves and product reserves, in China is also very high, uh, approximately you know a billion barrels, approximately, which is significant. In India is about 60, 70 million barrels. So there's a big difference out there. Should it come to some kind of situation where you have to withdraw from the reserves. But apart from that, it's a fairly similar situation. I think India is a little bit more advantaged, right, in terms of the general operation because the exposure to the strait is is lesser. It has also got the advantage, like I said, of the export valve, as I call it, export safety valve. So India exports about 1.3, 1.4 million barrels outside. Should the case be, if you divert that to domestic supply, you you mitigate a lot of the challenges that you otherwise have, right? And so So yes, that's the similarity and the difference, and I think that the reserve is the key difference that China and India have. China is order of magnitude plus more than what India has got, which is, I think, in reality, kind of like it's a psychological kind of like safety. Usually, you don't have to reserve reserves, but by managing these different demand supply levers that I've talked about, I think India should do well, and China is kind of in a similar situation.
So, Mediradas, I come back to you now. Uh,
No, just I'll also add to what Atanu said on this particular
yes,
aspect. I
yes.
think I always see China whenever there is something happening, and what they have done. I think in this particular crisis, they are better in a way prepared, because if you see their exposure to this Middle East gas, particularly gas side, I will talk about, is much less than what we have. We have 60%. They only are dependent on 20%. Second part is that they have the huge pipeline connectivity. So they have pipeline connectivity with Russia, then they have pipeline connectivity with Central Asia and Myanmar. So if there is some shortage of 20%, I think they still can manage in a better way. And third most important part is they have underground storage. So underground storage equivalent to something like 30 BCM, that's a huge buffer. Besides petroleum reserve, they also have huge gas storage. So these three areas, I think these three things which we need to do. I think again for us, same takeaways we need from this crisis, and I think we have to learn the same thing from China also. So they are actually structurally they were better for handling this crisis.
So, sir,
And
this brings me to now the question which we all have been asking the government. In India, we always feel, I mean, at least that's how I perceive it, that we take knee-jerk reaction, knee-jerk actions. We wait for the crisis to happen, and then we start taking action. It is not that the first time we are facing a situation like that. We did have a point where we suffered a similar situation when there were sanctions on Iran, which was a very good partner which we had, and but we drifted apart. Then we saw, in other such situations, we really came of age in a policy front when we took a stance as far as import of Russian oil was concerned. But then there we were in a little corner because our banking system did not have that much strength for assurance and insurance of the huge VLCCs. That of course one of our private players has shown the strength. I mean, Reliance has for its Ethane got its own VLCCs. So if what is it? Why don't we always talk policy, we always talk infrastructure, but we don't have it, and we see the ripple effect. Today also we are doing crisis management, we are doing the daily thing, and this also leads to a panic situation. We are seeing hoarding happening, we are people talking about LPG crisis, which is genuine to a certain extent, and suddenly everyone is talking about petrol diesel crisis. So there's complete panic. So why can't we, if I may say so, adopt an approach like China? Any one of you can take this question first.
So okay, so I can go first. Well, so I think that yes, certainly China has got certain things which is done better, but there are certain basic structural elements in any such what you call system, right? Let's talk about crude, which you can't do much, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is that you are dependent on about 85 to 90% of your crude from outside of India. You can do nothing about it. What you can do, certainly, and this is something that one should do aggressively, is how do I look at mechanisms of diversification? And that's happened to a bit, right? If you look at it, 15 years back, 10 years back, our crude dependency on the Persian Gulf was at about 65 to 70%. That's come down to about 40%, 35 to 40%. Granted, a lot of it is got to do with Russia that happened over the past 3 years or so. But there's a lot of opportunity for further diversification, and diversification is one of the biggest shock absorbers, right, in such a situation. So, for example, you can certainly look at how I can extend mechanisms of trade and instruments to include things like Canada. Canada has got Western Canadian Select, which comes out of the West Coast. That's a resource which can be tapped, 1 million barrels out there. The other smaller sources that can be developed, right? Guyana, Brazil, which has got a certain amount of what they call crude that can be tapped out here. There's United States shale, which forms it's a light crude, but it certainly can be blended in the slate, and you can up that what you call ratio. And so your dependency can be reduced, and the flexibility of crude sourcing can be much more, and therefore, given the nature of your refineries, you should be able to manage these kind of shocks probably much better over time. Not that you cannot at this point of time also. Uh, then comes the question of, things around the buffer, the reserves. Like, yes, granted, we are short out there. 40 million barrels is short. It probably needs to be about a 150 million barrels or so, 100 to 150 million barrels at least, given the nature of our consumption. And we're short out there. We should get that. But again, having said that, we also want to understand that that is the last resort, right? Which you employ as a mitigation lever, and the other systems in terms of your diversification of crude sourcing, more than what you have today, should be an important part of the whole mechanism of getting safety into your crude supply. So that's one thing that I would kind of emphasize. How do I diversify better? How do I get into my basket, other sources which we have not tapped as yet to the degree that we should? How do we institutionalize mechanisms of trade, in a much more friction-free manner, which allows those things to happen more seamlessly? Those are things that I think we need to put focus on to make this a much more resilient systems. It is not possible in the world to get rid of the shocks. This will happen. This will happen. It happened today. It'll happen again later. It'll happen. His question is, how do you figure out mitigation levers? Like, one of the things is diversification to be able to manage this. And then, of course, buffers and other things are going to help. And the second, which is a longer term, I think, thing that we need to look at is how do we look at our local endowments, and how are we able to do that, use that for making alternative routes, right? So one thing that, and I think Mr. Mendirata would be better able to comment on this, we have a huge endowment of coal, right? And we certainly, there's an issue in terms of gas, but you can certainly convert coal into gas using coal gasification, which the Prime Minister announced some time back. It should gather more steam, and that gives a very effective complement through synthetic natural gas and other fuels in terms of being able to complement such what you call shocks and also make you energy secure. So there are different mechanisms, shorter term and longer term, medium term and longer term, that one needs to what you call harness to be able to make a much more resilient, diversified basket for energy, which will serve you well in the long terms in terms of geopolitical situations that may arise, from time to time.
So that's exactly the point. We have policies in place, we have structures in place, but we are still not there. We still react to the crisis scene. Mediratta sir, I would like to bring in you here. We have been talking about gas, we have been talking about converting into gas based economy, and pipe gas has still not become a daily way of cooking fuel across the country. There are certain areas, certain regions where it has not reached as yet. So dependence on LPG is there. Now, where exactly is it because of the federal structure and the role of the states that we face this challenge? Where exactly is the, where exactly are we falling short of when we have policy, we have everything in place? Is it politics or something else?
Yeah, I just missed the last two sentences.
But
Sorry.
I wanted to know, is it politics or something else? I mean, why are we have policies in place? We desired to have pipe gas across, but we're still heavily dependent on LPG. Of course, LPG is for one certain program, which government is, and it is a big successful program for a certain section of our society. But the point is, even the other part of the society, where pipe gas should have been there, are still using LPG. For example, in Hyderabad, pipe gas is not there everywhere. People are still dependent on LPG. So why is it? Where is the problem? Is it politics or what?
No, I think you said right. This, I think, focus with which we should be working upon on the conversion from LPG to pipe gas. I think there should be mission mode working. And though we have put enablers in place, like we have issued licenses, we have put some minimum conditions of work program for these CGD licenses, but still the speed is not there because that is not so remunerative section of the overall gas sales. So when CGD company, they of course have more incentive to focus on CNG station than on the PNG connections. I think government should put now at least the crisis has put us in a spot where I think we will focus all of our energy into expanding our gas access to the PNG or households, and then increase the demand from the household, and maybe switching from LPG to household connections, PNG connections. If you compare the two, we have 33 crore of LPG connections, but we have only 1.5 crore CNG, this PNG connections. The gap is so high, and the potential for conversion is so high. I think we need to put all out energies, and wherever we need to correct our policies, because there are some problems in the laying of pipelines. And when many of these CGD companies have been saying about the amount of resistance they face, or the amount of problem they face when they put up, definitely put much more focus on PNG connections. Second part is that on CBG also government has been putting lot of focus, but again that sector is not moving. That movement is very small, very little. Government has had a target of 5,000 CBG plants, but just even the our prime minister announced that the total connections, total CBG plants are now just over 100, and out of them also not many are operating to the satisfaction of the developers. So I think we need to put more focus on CBG, more focus on access to the households and commercial customers. And third one, of course, coal gasification, because we have a lot of coal, so we must definitely be working upon coal. And when we are talking about storage, if you see the numbers required for putting finance required for storage is very high. So maybe if we are putting up so much of money into or government support to hydrogen, I think that some part of that should move to initially to CBG and this household, because problem with the CGD licensee is they are not able to put up lines, pipelines, because it's not so they don't see money coming back in say 5 years or 10 years, because some places there is a remote when they want to provide access to the remote location, they need that kind of numbers, but those numbers are not there. So maybe some support from the government should come for putting up the network within the CGD company, so that the speed at which the CGD expansion should take place, that takes place. I will just give you one example what government did for rural electricity access.
Yes.
There were huge programs programs launched by government for bringing the network to rural households, and
correct.
so much of money was put in, and then only we are now able to see the day when there is almost 100% access to all households in the country. I would not say even to the remotest, but largely it is taking care of all the urban centers and rural centers. So similar thing we need to have for the households, because so much of infrastructure laid with the LPG dealers and LPG cylinders. I think some part should go now to the getting connectivity, CNG, this PNG connectivity for the households.
So, thank you for explaining that. But, Mr. Mukherjee, I would like to bring you in here. And I want to understand. See, you spoke about India's refining strength and the refining capacity which India has. Uh, why do Indian refiners then, and we have the best of refiners, why do they shy away from producing a certain amount of LPG? Knowing that we are heavily dependent on LPG, why do they shy away?
Well, I'm not sure that they shy away. So if you look at any refinery complex, typical LPG production in a refinery complex is about 3 to 4% of the total output. Okay. If you push the cuts, as they call it, right? Essentially, if you change the cut points, right, you can maybe push it to 5%, right, or maybe 6%. So between the distillation columns, which is one of the units in the refinery, and the FCC, which is the cracker, that's about the range you get, 4 to 5% max in heavy refineries, because that's the kind of oil that you treat, and so that limits you to the amount that you can get from the refineries to about, probably 3 to 4 million tons per annum. Okay, a little more, maybe 5 million tons per annum. The rest comes from gas processing, right? Local gas that is generated, right? From there, you get another 5 to 6 million tons. You're talking about 12 million tons of total LPG and another 24 million tons export. So you can push it a little bit. You can say, okay, the propane or the butane that is coming out of the refineries right now, which you some of it which you give out for processing of something called propylene, don't do it. In a situation like this, that may up it by maybe another million ton, but that's the best you can push, right, in terms of LPG. So you will be having a continuous deficit because of the volume of refining that you do, gated at 12 million tons, along with the gas processing, what you call LPG, at that level. So you have to import if you're in LPG situation, if you want to use LPG as a fuel, as a domestic fuel and industrial fuel, and that is the reality. You can change a little bit, but not really much, and that's just the limitation of the science and the economics of a heavy refinery running. You cannot do much about it beyond a certain point. So that's the reality.
Essentially importing was cheaper than producing it itself.
Importing, yeah, I mean, the markets, the different ways to look at it, right? I mean, when a refinery operates, you're looking at these different, what you call, components coming out of these different units, and you say, okay, if I convert this propane and propane into propylene through PDH process. So that's a process which is dehydrogenating the, what you call, propane. I get so much of additional benefit. So why should I not do that? And all in all, if I import LPG from outside and what I produce right now, I'm more or less even in terms of the cost. So why not import it? And then there's a lot of imports that's possible. I mean, of course, we are dependent on the Gulf, but for that matter, United States is the largest producer of LPG, right? With the shale revolution, it produces about 75 million tons, right, of LPG worldwide. 30% goes to about China. Only about 5% comes to India. So India has, like the point I made, we should actively try to diversify, right, in terms of our sourcing. We only are dependent, on the 90% of LPG comes from the Gulf, right, which is a significant dependency. Yes, it is cheaper. Yes, it takes like 3 days to transship from there, compared to transshipping from United States over the Cape of Good Hope or the Suez. which is 15 days to 20 days. So that cost adds freight cost and time. But if you look at it from an overall perspective of security and cost, you're probably much better off diversifying across different sources so that you do not have this situation where you have a bottleneck which can upend your entire, the economic situation in a very short span of time, fully
So what I
knowing what our limitations are.
So what I'll do is I'll keep the last two questions for myself and open the floor for some questions from the viewers who have joined us in. I mean, I know there would be everyone would be having their thoughts and certain questions. So we have a question from Mr. S. Balasubramanian, and he's asking that considering the current geopolitical tensions and India's heavy dependence on imported crude oil, what practical steps should India prioritize in the near future to ensure energy security without putting too much pressure on inflation and economic growth? Uh, Mr. Mukherjee, would you like to take it first?
Yeah, sure. So I think first of all, let me just make a comment that India will be dependent for crude unless some breakthrough happens within the country. It will be dependent on crude for a long, long time to come for a majority of its crude needs in the nation. So that's a given, right? And so the question then becomes to really make yourself secure. How do I diversify my crude basket and take advantage, like I said, of the fact that I have got a refinery complex, which is one of the most flexible in the world, and a large. So if you look at Reliance Refinery, Jamnagar, that is what I think one of the most complex refineries right in the world, and one of the largest at 1.4 billion, a million barrels per day. So how do I what you call diversify, and how do I take advantage of my refinery complex to process different kinds of crude from different sources in the right combination, which gives me the flexibility and therefore energy security. That's one. Second thing we need to understand is that from an inflation perspective and macroeconomics perspective, right? Yes, we have this geopolitical situation which might spike the crude price to $145. Maybe it may remain for $100 for a few days, but it'll ease out over a period of time because this is a geopolitical shock. And overall, the net rise over a year may be $10 or $15 averaged out, on a per barrel basis. If you take that number into account, the net effect on CAD for every $10 or $15 rise is between about 35 to 40 to 60 basis points. Now, India's CAD today is, pretty comfortable. 0.8 to 1, what do you call percent, is not too bad at all. This may get pushed up by another 40-50% because of the disruption, which should not have happened, but we can pretty much accommodate that, right? So I think from a CAD perspective, we are okay even with this what you call disruption, and so we are safe out there, I think. And from an inflation perspective, obviously, any crude price spike, by a certain amount sustained, right? Not just what I call first short period, but sustained over a period of time, results in inflation probably getting down in the economy, right? And so probably a $10 increase in crude price sustained, averaged over the year, although the spikes may be 145, will give you about 50 basis points or so increase in inflation. That's kind of like just the broad mechanics. So it is not desirable, but it is not catastrophic, okay? And again, as crude prices abate over time, those things will come back up over a year's time, year and a half's time, because by the time these things normalize, it takes a little time. So it'll come back what you call into that situation. So the best bet that you have essentially is to take advantage of geographic diversity, right, and dependency, and be able to what you call make that as a part of your overall crude procurement strategy, along with your refining complex that you have got, which is a very flexible refining complex, and build on that to bolster energy security and growth. Unless there is something which happens which changes the whole crude dynamics because you have found exploration which has generated a lot of crude, which is unlikely, but that's a possibility.
Mr. Mediratta, would you like your thoughts, sir?
No, what largely Tanu said, that is perfectly aligned. All this is one is that this is a short term thing, so we should be able to absorb this kind of increase. So as Tanu said, it is $10 for maybe oil, and for gas we may expect, we are today seeing the price of about $18 per MMBTU. Maybe it can go up to 2025, but that for say a few months in a year, that would be net will be only say $3 to $4. Last year we were averaging at $11, so maybe $15 average if you see. That's manageable. But I think to avoid the panic, if government can support this additional cost of gas, I think then we can procure full amount of LNG from globally from elsewhere, because the LNG is available, not that it's not available. We need to only pay for that price. So if we are ready to pay the price, we can easily take care of all the requirement of the country. So fortunately for us, this is not a crisis for the oil, but it's more for price, which in India we are more sensitive. But I think we should be able to take care of it. And short term, this is the only way government should think of. Instead of, though we are trying our best to meet the requirement through domestic sources, by giving all the gas to priority sector and leaving the other sector behind. But probably with a more a kind of generous this thing, probably we could have taken care by buying more oil, more gas, LNG, and then giving it away to those who were short, because the customers who were not getting the Qatar gas, they only were required to be compensated. And because for them also, when the price of oil is $100, of course the ones who were paying Brent linked prices, so Brent linked prices also gives you very high price, so maybe 12 $13, plus you take shipping, and then you take regasification. It would have been costing something like about $13 to $14. So instead of $14, you are paying something like $20. It should not have been a big issue, but we should have been immediately switched to getting more cargoes from the globally across.
So
That
sorry to interject there, but I want to bring in one point here that our gas pricing is still linked to crude. We have not formed a proper pricing mechanism, right? We have not developed our own benchmark.
Yeah, Richard, this takes a lot of time, because since we are importing 50% of gas, and globally the suppliers will not be comfortable using India's benchmark. They would be actually selling it more, which are something which is more liquid. So Brent is very, very liquid. So people prefer Brent. And when people want to actually diversify their risks across their portfolio, then they would take another one, which is say gas linked. So gas linked is in India mostly we are seeing Henry Hub and JKM. Of course, Henry Hub is more liquid. TTF also could have been used, I think. So far, because in that case, we need to give some kind of comfort to the suppliers who are elsewhere, and for them, they need very, very high liquidity, because in the financial market, you get all those liquidity, and that gives them comfort that any day they can simply switch, and whenever there is a huge high prices, even then they are actually they are not exposed to this high prices. So I think with this we don't expect the switch to Indian benchmark may happen in 1 or 2 years time. We are still young, 5-year old. We are also going to have a financial market based on our index soon. NSE is already getting ready, and they will be launching this contract in next financial year. And it will take some time to bring liquidity in that contract and our contract, probably 3 to 5 years. Then we should be able to pitch on. Like, why not? We at least in India, people should be using it for their trades. And slowly, when it really becomes too big, then the international suppliers would get some comfort, and then they would switch to such benchmarks.
So, sir, now we already have another question in place, and it is from Mr. G.S. Chanabeswara. So, pardon me if I pronounced your name wrong, but the question is: for months at least, Strait of Hormuz may remain shut. Maybe India to import LPG from Russia, US, Australia, and West Africa. What should be impact for our 15 million ton of LPG imports? So there's of course, I would just like to make a point here that the petroleum minister had just made a statement that India is importing from other places as well. Now, Mr. Atnur, let's begin with you. That what would be the impact of this LPG imports in the current situation? Because the routing, the transit route will be longer now.
Yeah. So I think the amongst the whole basket of crude, gas, and LPG is the most challenging and vulnerable at this point of time because of the dependency that we have got. And switching capacities or routing alternative source takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, right? Because those capacities are committed, right? If you look at US capacity, like the question mentioned, I'll take one example. US 75 million tons, maybe another 10 million tons of excess capacity they have got, possibly, but by the time you bring it online, it takes weeks, many weeks, right? And so you lose time. Now, so you can't do it all of a sudden. So you have to figure out other mechanisms, like the diplomatic mechanism that was employed to allow the two cargoes of LPG to pass through the strait, right, for only for Indian ships, right, Indian cargoes, right. So we have to look at some of these stopgap mechanisms to what we call make up the LPG, see how much we can, reroute from refining, which is going to be a minute short, not so much of an amount, a shorter amount. But that's a real vulnerability that we have got. And the other question, if it remains shut for months, I think all of us are dead. So so the point is that it is unlikely. Anything can happen. Everything is possible, but it's unlikely because the whole world is going to get affected. And if the whole world gets affected, then there will be mechanisms that nations will take upon themselves to put in place so that that catastrophe doesn't happen, right? So that's the self-correcting mechanism, I think, by which it'll resolve itself over time, although that's a possibility. But LPG remains vulnerable. There's some amount you can offset, based on alternative sources in a certain period of time. Some amounts you can offset based on refining capacity, a little bit that can be reapplied. Some amount that you can reroute instead of putting propylene. You can route it towards actual roadable LPG. So that'll elevate somewhat, but it will not eliminate the whole, 20, 24 million tons of dependency you've got. 90% of that comes from the Gulf region. That will not be eliminated. That we've got to live with and figure out to mitigate, right, on an ongoing stopgap arrangement basis.
For both of you, a very interesting question has come, and I'm itching to respond, but I leave it to my guests to respond to this question. This is from Shivam Tiwari, and he says, "Can this crisis translate in a similar manner for EVs, like Chinese ones, as they did for smaller, efficient Japanese cars in US during previous Arab oil embargo?" So, any one of you would like to take it first, and let's be a little crisp and quick because we would, if there are more questions, we'd like to take a couple.
I would just take a short one and then I'll leave it to Mr. Mejirwada to answer. But so my short answer is probably no, not at least in the next 10 to 15 years, because the dependency of, unlike what you call efficiency improvements in a car, it's contained within the body of the car, right, on the engine and basically the engine systems. But for EVs to get to that level, there's a whole effect in terms of the charging stations that need to be there. There's a whole thing around the battery efficiencies that, of course, will improve over time. So it's a bigger what you call problem in terms of EVs trying to replace uh, the IC cars to a large degree, which can alleviate this problem compared to the more efficient internal combustion engines that Japanese cars did during the 70s embargo, 70s and 80s. So that's really my short answer for this one.
Richa, yeah, I feel the same thing actually is happening, but still the pace is not that much. In India, we are trying to move away from fossil, but still we are not doing that much. I think, but I don't see that thing happening in India. Problem is, I have not seen any debate that should we switch to electricity or convert all our requirement to electricity. That kind of debate is really not happened.
So,
So
sir,
maybe we still talk about sourcing better, sourcing diversified, but that's not the narrative we are now taking.
but if I may add to both of you, that we'll see more politics if that happens because of the federal
Yeah,
structure
yeah,
in
Yes.
yeah.
India.
Yes.
The states will be up in arms, and electricity being the way it is. So another interesting.
But Richa, incidentally, one of the such thing has started happening because now LPG is short. People have started buying induction, and now there is a shortage of induction. This thing.
We hear so, sir. We hear so, but
and and,
hopefully,
and 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 that will finally actually increase the electricity demand, but that may happen in the short run. People may
yeah.
keep that thing kind of a standby. That so that change will happen in the household, that they will keep some induction as a standby, but otherwise not as a more of a permanent thing.
So, sir, the next question is from Mr. Lakshmikant Srivastava, and he says that very well diversified supply chain is available to India for import of crude, thanks to the diplomacy of the government. It's 100% right there. But then the next part is there may be substantial variability of quality, soft to hard. Whether our refiners are equipped to handle all optimally, the answer is yes, but let the guests answer it. Yes, sir, Mr. Mukherjee.
Yes, no. So I would say that Indian refineries, right, are one of the most flexible refineries that you have got in the world. There are three of them. One is at that scale. One is the United States, which has got 70% heavy refineries at about 16 million barrels per day. The second is Chinese refineries, which is able to handle a slate of crudes from heavy to other blends. And the third is Indian refineries at about 5.56 million barrels, right, of flexible blends that can blend. So I think the problem the refineries are is our advantage. Our main go-to market focus or strategy or action focus has got to make the diversification more active and implementable and actionable, right, across a more wider variety of sources. Like I said, if you look at one heavy crude, which is very highly discounted and which is probably available now in fair volumes, is the Canadian Western Canadian Select, right? China already imports about, I think, 200,000 barrels from them. It's gone to 1 million barrels of export capacity, which we can tap into. That's one. The others that are coming in, we are used to Venezuelan Mary, right? We used to process that. Venezuelan Mary is going to come into the market as with this new, what you call, geopolitical changes in Venezuela. You'll have more capacity coming in, right? So I think you've got Guyana, short, small volumes, but that's going to come in. Mexican Maya, that's again an opportunity that you can tap. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for baskets and in the baskets which you can tap into. And because your refinery is pretty very flexible of the nation in the way they were constructed and designed, our ability to handle those crudes, right, our wide variety of slate is much more, and that helps us in terms of energy security, better gross refining margins for refineries, and giving you basically an opportunity to look at different elements in the basket to make it most optimal.
Okay, so we have immediate question, and this is from Mr. Harsh P. And he says, "Do you believe that this crisis might cause Europe and maybe India to move towards renewables faster than the planned for energy security. Well, we are already moving to green energy, and the
Yeah,
government is
yeah, yeah.
incentivizing it quite a bit. But to move faster and just focus on renewables, your thoughts, Mr. Mukherjee.
No. Simple. So let me put it this very simply. And people ask me this question a lot of times in many, many international conferences. Renewables is not a substitute for the kind of things that you do with hydrocarbons, right? Uh, Plastics cannot be produced from renewables. For example, petrochemicals products cannot be produced from renewables. Large fleets of cars, yes, EV will replace some amount of it, but they cannot. It's very based. All the math shows that it's not going to happen in anytime soon in the near future. Yes, there'll be some substitution EVs, but it's not going to change the transportation flows dramatically, right? Renewables will help absolutely, right, in terms of complementing and substituting power generation, power related whatever activities. But where it has got to do with elements and commodities which are dependent upon the hydrocarbons and chemistry and thermodynamics and the economics of hydrocarbons, it's very unlikely, right? So yes, there are parallel paths. Renewables has got its place in terms of complementing and enlarging the energy basket, but it is unlikely to substitute, in the for a long time, right, for the kind of things that hydrocarbons do in terms of commodity energy based products, which are essential for society and life.
Richa,
Yes,
I'll
yes.
add one number. I'll add one number so that Harsh may, or yeah, Harsh will ask this question.
Mhm.
See, we have about 250 gigawatt of renewables today out of
Mhm.
500 gigawatt of total capacity. So with that also, we are able to move our needle of renewable only say to 12-13%. Suppose next 250 also we will add our total that needle will move to 20-25%. So actually moving needle with renewables is so slow. It takes painfully long time to actually get there. And as Tanu said, not everything you can do with that. One is, of course, we are facing challenge of intermittency and ramping up and ramping down that grid operators face, and that kind of challenge. Everyone says that it can be met only through batteries or gas, and so gas will also likely to play a bigger role there when it becomes major issue. Today it is still less of issue because we are 12-13%, but if it is going 20%, then it will become a major issue, and then gas may come that time in a big way.
Madhira, I mean, I'll just take the next question, which is kind of in continuation of what we were just talking, is by Mr. Shankar Vishwanathan. And he says, should India aggressively promote electrification of cooking and transportation, insulate itself from the volatilities of the fossil fuel markets? Parallelly, invest in renewables and storage to ensure the higher demand does not stress the grid and India sticks to its net zero goals.
No, I think parallelly doing is definitely we are doing. So there is no issue. Renewables and storage are required. We have to work with them, but this we are not able to do away with. So that is the issue. And cooking also in India, it will take much longer time for switching to electric cooking. Even in other parts of the world, people have not moved from other choices to electric cooking. So it will take its own time. Maybe there is some uh, event like this has happened, but it will not really. En masse people will switch to electric cooking.
So now I'll keep the last two questions. Being the moderator, I want to have the last two questions for myself. And my first question to both my guests is, you know, it ultimately pinches our pocket. Whatever happens, I hope Mr. Trump is listening to us and it's just like it's really pinching all our pockets because the pricing is in such a way. The Indian government uses a certain amount of subsidy also. It tries to cushion the impact. But what is the price of whether it is oil or gas that a buyer and consumer both can be comfortable at? I know no one likes to bet on oil and
Yeah,
gas,
yeah.
but a little hint would help us.
Richa, just I'll take this first because I remember the events which happened about 10, 15 years back. That time when we were getting gas at $3, people said, "Oh, it is too high," and now we are getting at $15. We again say 15 is too high, but of course we are now okay with the $8, $9. So the situation and these things go in parallel. If today we feel that our customers are most comfortable with something like $8 to $9. Had it we got something like so power sector requires something at $7 or $8, but other sectors can manage with the high single digit number. Beyond 12 to 15 in India, that finds really less number of takers, and they painfully do it. But again, this sometimes look it's not it's all relative. So today, when we are talking about 15, 20, we find it's too high, but 10 is okay. But maybe after some time, we'll find 15 is okay, but 25 is too bad. Yeah.
Any thoughts, Mr. Mukherjee?
Yeah, no, no, I agree with with Rajesh, Mr. Mudurata. It's all relative. So, but again, end of the day, what
No,
matters
Mr.
is,
Atanu.
yes, hello,
Yes, yes, please.
yeah.
I
So
think it was.
yeah, so what I was saying was that this is all relative, like was said by Rajesh, right? But the question end of the day, what matters is whatever is the commodity price, right? Does it support the economic value that is created? So that is the bottom line, right? So your gas might be at $15 per MMBTU, but if the customer is willing to pay a generation of power, for that at, right, 18 rupees a kilowatt hour, right, or 18 rupees unit, that's fine, but that's not the case, right? The economics supports 7 or 8 rupees, and at that price point, right, your gas price, for example, is probably not more than 7 to 8, $6 to $7. That's what we've seen per MMT is the cutoff. Same thing with other derivatives, right? Commodity prices like crude prices, right? What is the society's or the customer's willingness to pay, and that depends on the state of the economy and where it is on the what you call growth ladder. So if refined products, right, and refined commodities like plastics and others have got a certain price which is absorbable by the market in some demand, then the price of oil at about 70, $80 per barrel is probably about right there, but it'll bounce around that. So I think there's no absolute answer. It's more of a relative answer, but end of the day, does the overall economics support the need for the demand in the society, right? For these different commodities. That's what determines the price. And based on some of the markers, it will be relative and will vary from sector to sector. And so I think that's kind of the best that I could think of. I can think of in terms of how this price propagation of price relative pricing could work out, right, in terms of in the Indian context.
And my last question to both of you is do you believe that India, the Indian diplomacy, has shown a certain kind of maturity in handling the situation? Of course, the public opinion is diverse, it's divided as to what could be done and what could not be done. But your thoughts on have we shown a certain level of maturity? And a supplement question to this is can politics and energy be separated?
Maybe I'll take that. I think
Yeah.
first. Go ahead, Rajesh. After you.
Yes, sir. Any one
Yeah,
of
yeah,
you.
no, yeah, no, I can go first. See, one is
Yes.
that I think on the diplomacy side, I feel we have handled well. I don't think there would have been any other way out, given that geopolitics is so volatile, and we have one of the president talking one on one day and something else another day. So we have handled quite well. Nothing. I don't think anything better could have been done. And second was just Richa, if you can.
Can energy and politics be
No, it
separated?
cannot be separated. No, 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 no. It is now too difficult. Everything, see, all lives of people now touches electricity. For transport, you need diesel, petrol, and for other products, of course, you have other fuels. So all of this are so in and so much enmeshed with the public life. The government cannot ignore this particular aspect. At one time, we used to only, of course, so far in India, we have seen the same thing happening. Diesel, petrol, and electricity, these three are very, very sensitive. And the political parties they take maximum care that you don't kind of make these things inflammable, or it should not ignite so that people will get just annoyed by something like this. So these three definitely remain most political commodities. Economy comes later, but politics comes first. So that will remain.
Mr. Mukherjee, your thoughts?
Oh no, no. So I think from a diplomacy perspective, I think it was done very well. There's no doubt about it. I completely agree. It was handled with the right nuance, the right balance, with the right what you call set of constituent parties in the right manner, with the right communication. I think that was fantastically done. And again, like I think, like Mr. Medirata said, politics is intertwined with energy, and you cannot separate that. And more so, if energy in a growing economy where energy is a key driver of the societal growth. Energy drives society, if you look at it, right? And the moment it gets enmeshed with the growth of the society and the prosperity of the society, politics is an intrinsic part of shaping the energy policy and the energy dynamics in the society. So I don't think you can separate that, and history has shown that it's not possible to separate that. Yes, when it's small in scale, yes, probably you can, but as the scale grows and becomes intertwined in the societal activities and societal outcomes, it is an intrinsic part of the entire process, which you cannot separate.
So, and as I sum up, one thing very interesting which I have noted now, that for the last couple of years, India, though not the largest producer, has got a huge voice in the energy space. What India says as a consumer by the sheer size and the capacity of our refineries, we have found a space in all among all the big players of the energy space. So it was a Saturday, but it was a very, very topical and interesting conversation which we had. And my biggest takeaway after talking to both of you was that yes, there is a challenge, but is it forever? No. Is there a way out? Yes. We're not running like a rabbit, but we're being like a turtle, but we will find a way. So we'll end on a very optimistic note, while it still continues to pinch our pocket, our prices of gas and petrol, but we'll hold our thoughts there. So thank you so much from Team Business Line for sparing this time with us. And to our viewers and listeners who joined us, thank you so much for sparing the time. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Richard.
you, Richard.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Madhurata. Nice to
It
meet you.
was wonderful to be part with great viewers, and the questions were also great. Yeah, very good questions we saw. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.